For too long, we, the videographers, have gotten the short end of the stick. Look at the mode dial on a camera. Looking around, there's endless options for photographers to express their creativity, where we videographers have been relegated to but a tiny sliver of the mode dial. But that all changes today with the affordably priced Canon R50 V. Behold! On the mode dial, there are endless video functions, lots of custom options for us to express ourselves, but oh, look at this, a tiny sliver for you photographers. How does it feel? How does it feel now? I'm Jordan Drake, and Chris Niccolls and I are going to be reviewing the Canon R50 V for PetaPixel.
Okay guys, hypothetical situation. Let's say that you are trying to shoot a camera review in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you are just trying to use whatever lighting you can find. You didn't bring anything to supplement it. Also, let's say that you've got music that you do not have the rights to use bleeding into your terrible microphones. You need better gear. I don't know, is this light any better? I think it probably looks horrible. So honestly, I think you guys should check out KH.com. I know what you're thinking. You're like, they just sell used cameras and lenses. That's not the case. They actually sell lighting and microphones that we desperately need right now. We gotta move before we get flagged for this music now, so next location. So don't find yourself in this hypothetical situation. Remember that editing and post can only do so much. Get the right gear. Go to KH.com, check out their lighting, check out their microphones. You know exactly what you're gonna get before you buy it. The pricing's gonna be fair, and they have a generous 21-day return policy. That is why KH.com is PetaPixel's official pre-owned camera gear partner. Okay, so it's Chris Niccolls here to talk about the one photographic option that I have on this command dial. So again, you're gonna be hearing a lot from Jordan Drake in this video, but I do want to talk about the handle, the impressions, and some of the photographic features on this camera. But honestly, this camera is not really made for me, and I think this has become quite apparent. But I should also mention, look where we are. We are in Las Vegas. We're here to see NAB. Very excited. It's my first time, but it also gives us a really cool, if not crazy and busy, backdrop to shoot some tests on this camera. But this is the city that never sleeps, so we find ourselves out here at night. Okay, so let me first off state that I actually really like the Canon EOS R50. I played with it quite a few years ago in Charleston. It's a fantastic entry-level APS-C camera with good functional controls, actually decent autofocus for wildlife. I enjoyed using it, and a lot of the internals are now here in the R50 V. You could think of this as a stripped-down R50, but there's a lot of stuff missing that I want to talk about next. Okay, so let's talk about the obvious thing that's been omitted here on the R50 V. Because this is a vlog style camera, they are leaving off an EVF. And for me, of course, that's a big downside. That's almost a deal breaker. I like having the EVF, but I get for the vlogging crowd, you're probably not gonna use it very much. But they've also downgraded the back screen. This is just over 1 million dots. It's actually lower resolution than one you found on the R50, and I think that's to keep the cost down. It does fully articulate, which makes sense for a camera of this style, but this is all I have to rely on, and it's not a very high-end display. We've got a mechanical shutter, but this camera only operates in electronic first curtain mode. I'm okay with that. I mean, this isn't something I'm going to necessarily shoot a lot of shallow depth of field, wide aperture lenses with at high shutter speeds, so I'm not too worried about the truncated bokeh. But again, it is going to be an issue perhaps in some limited situations. I do at least like having electronic first curtain, so I don't have to worry about rolling shutter issues on this sensor. As far as the actual photographic controls go, we do have 2 command dials on here, but they're both operated by the thumb. The top dial is nice, but the back dial is one of those small, little bit fiddly ones that also doubles as your joystick. And so I will find that I'm often hitting something that I don't want to hit, going into self-timer mode or white balance controls when I'm just trying to change the exposure comp. Another feature here that I'm kind of having a struggle with is the grip itself. It's actually quite comfortable. I mean, the rubber on there, I do feel like I'm not going to drop this camera, but it's actually even a little bit small for my hands. So when I'm pinching the camera here tight to hold it in position, it feels a little bit uncomfortable, and I often feel like my fingers aren't even closing the gap there on the grip. Look, there's a tunnel right through there. I can see the tally lamp through my hand right now. Here's another feature that's interesting that, again, might not appeal to me, but appeal to a lot of other people. It's got a digital hot shoe here, which means that all the contacts are buried under the front of the shoe, underneath the mount, and this will interface with Canon flashes, this will interface with XLR adapters, that kind of stuff, but it also means that I can't just throw like a transmitter on here and use this with studio flashes, because there's absolutely no center pin involved here. From a handling aspect, just the size of the camera, I do have to admit, it's actually a really nice looking camera. I like the metal R50 V badge here. I like the curves on it. I mean, it's really nice looking, and it's quite easy to carry around. This is 323 grams. It's actually 5 grams lighter than the R50, and yet it's smaller, more compact, so it feels very solid. So if we're only 5 grams lighter and we're losing a whole bunch of stuff like EVF and controls, what are we gaining? Well, I think the best thing to do is talk to Jordan about that next.
All right, it's Jordan Drake here. It is day 2, and there's a couple things I need to quickly talk about. First of all, apparently the strip wasn't loud enough, so we're actually filming from inside the NAB show floor, and let's be honest, yesterday was kind of a bummer, just talking about what had been stripped away from the R50, but I got good news. Today I get to talk about all the things that have been added to the R50 V for people like myself who are shooting video. One other thing, we're actually filming on the R50 V now. So Chris asked the question, if this is only 5 grams lighter than the R50 and they stripped so much away, what did they add? Right now I'm looking at a beautiful shining red tally lamp as well. There's a 1/4-20 on the bottom of this camera. Every camera has a 1/4-20 on the bottom, but what about the side? This actually has one so you can shoot it in vertical orientation. It might not sound like much, but if you're using, say, a video tripod like this here, it can't flip into the vertical orientation. This screw will let you just drop a quick release plate on it. There have been some other physical changes as well. Chris might not like the mode dial that segregates the photographers into a single tiny sliver of it, but I love the fact that there's a whole bunch of custom video record modes on here so I can set it up quickly for slow motion, different lighting situations, things like that. As well, on top of the shutter, we do have a zoom rocker, which generally I'd be like, I don't care about that on an RF camera. But interestingly, this has been released with the new 14 to 30 millimeter power zoom lens, which you'll need to use this. Because this is a more video-centric camera, I was expecting quite a few different video record modes not found in the R50, but that's not really the case. And I think that largely comes down to the 24 megapixel sensor we've got here. It's not the fastest reading sensor, so you can shoot oversampled 4K up to 30 frames per second. If you want to go 4K with a faster frame rate, that brings us to the one unique record mode on the R50 V, which is 4K 60p, but it does incur a hefty crop in order to access that. But the biggest thing I've been asking for on the R series cameras forever that this finally addresses is, when you hit record, what does your horizon do? It actually stays on screen. You can still tell if the camera is level while you're recording, which is something you've generally had to move all the way over to the Cinema series cameras to have. It's finally here. That is wonderful news. We've still got this issue where if you hit the record button, the histogram disappears, and you know what? While I'm recording, I need to still be able to check the metering of my scene. Canon fix this. So those are the major additions to this camera. Now let's find out how it actually performs. Okay, it's day 3. You can tell it's a brand new day because I'm wearing a new shirt and I sound sick. But let's talk about how this camera performs. And first and most importantly with these kind of creator cameras, I think, is the autofocus performance. And this is something that Canon's done a really solid job with if you have a single subject in the frame. So if you're just a person at a desk talking to camera, it does a really nice job. But the big thing I wanted to test is if you have another face come in front of your subject, I find it'll just consistently lose the subject, even if you have the autofocus set to remain locked on to your main subject. So I ran a test because we've got a lot of faces here at the trade show. Now, as you can see here, when we've got a bunch of people behind Chris that aren't looking at the camera, it does a great job, even though we've got very shallow depth of field in this shot, really not hunting or moving irregularly. But when we do this separate test where a face comes in front of Chris's, even though it's set to lock on, you can see it loses focus, and it did it consistently and repeatedly, and this has been a Canon problem for a long time. Now, obviously the biggest limitation to this that Chris touched on is there's no in-body image stabilization. The kit lens does have it, So the real question is, how effective is that digital stabilization going to be? So you can see, just using the optical stabilization on the ultra wide angle lens here, we're getting a ton of bounce in the footage, but still looks fairly natural, although quite bouncy. Turn the digital stabilization on to its first mode, which is just digital stabilization on. There we do incur a little bit of a crop, and you can see it does help just give it a little bit less of a jerky effect. If we put the enhanced mode on, it is very solid, but you can see we're getting a lot of weirdness every time my feet hit the ground. And that's because we're shooting at a slow shutter speed. When my feet bounce, the entire frame blurs. So let's try that at a faster shutter speed. Here you can see we do actually get really nice digital stabilization walking with it, but because that's got a fast shutter speed, it's jerky, and that motion just doesn't look natural at all. So it's just going to be a matter of compromises, whether you're okay with jerky footage and stable footage, or natural looking motion and a little bit of bounciness.
All right, let's talk about overheating on the Canon R50 V. And to do my tests, I set it to the highest thermal threshold, so the camera can get a little bit warm, but it'll keep recording as long as it possibly can. And I was really impressed when I recorded internally to the card with a battery, going to 4K 24p footage, which remember is oversampled from the full information of the sensor. I was able to record 1 hour and 13 minutes before the battery died, and I wasn't even getting an overheat warning on it. Another good example is we were recording our podcast right on the NAB show floor, and unfortunately, because of the micro HDMI port on this camera, we weren't able to feed it into the board. So I just recorded 1080p internally right to the card, running it off a battery. And there we were able to get through the 1 hour and 20-minute podcast again with no flashing warnings on it. So I think you'll absolutely be able to use the Canon R50 V for most practical long-term recording.
So at the end of the day, the R50 V is exactly what you would expect it to be. It is a much more video-capable camera than the R50 at a very similar price, and you're getting real advantages. That headphone jack that we didn't see on the 50, the tally lamp, and a lot of those video record modes, as well as being able to level your footage while you're recording. But it does have some stiff competition. I mean, if you're planning to use this as a vlogging camera, don't. It doesn't have in-body image stabilization, and you can get a Pocket 3 from DJI for less money that is a much better suited tool for vlogging. But if you plan to use it as a creator camera, something that you can set on a tripod, use for podcasts, web calls, set up your shots, then it does have some interesting competition with the Sony ZV-E10 II. Both of these cameras are very similarly matched, and they have the same drawbacks, which is no IBIS in the units and limited battery life. But the Sony has a massive advantage in that it is using the E-mount system. So there are a lot of very affordable, very flexible, video-centric lenses available for it. And Canon's RF APS-C lineup is better than it used to be now that we have support for Sigma's lovely primes that I've been shooting most of this video on, but it is still very limited in terms of native options. And if you jump all the way over to Canon EF, then you're losing the size advantage as well. You're losing some of the benefits, like there's no more breathing compensation on it. So if you're already in the Canon ecosystem and need a small creator camera, as like a B cam or something like that, the R50 V makes a ton of sense. But if you're starting from scratch, I'd probably still lean towards the Sony ZV-10 just because it lets you get into a much more flexible ecosystem. You know what, I had a great time at NAB, and I did actually have a lot of fun with the Canon R50 V. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this camera in the comments down below. I know you will, and I don't need to tell you that. But you should also listen to the PetaPixel podcast. We recorded an absolutely chaotic episode here on the show floor, which is available right now. So check it out right here on the same YouTube channel, or you can listen to it. Just type in PetaPixel podcast on all your favorite podcasting apps. And if you really want to support the work that Chris and I are doing, the best way to do it is with a PetaPixel membership. $3 a month or $30 a year, you get ads-free access to PetaPixel, discounts at our merch store, and you can download full resolution test images from all of the cameras we've reviewed. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all again soon with more on PetaPixel. Let's go find lunch.